All right, Steeler fans, it's Monday. It's time for the Monday morning conversation. I have a repeat guest here. Alan Saunders of SteelersNow joins me. He's an award-winning podcast guest. That's why I keep having him on. Alan, welcome back to the show. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing great, man. And OTAs week 2 is in the books, and here we have the final week of phase 3 of OTAs before mandatory minicamp. And I really want to pick your brain about a lot of different things, trying to have people that are there on scene, on like watching this stuff live and not just through snippets on social media. Let's start talking about the quarterbacks because I think it's appropriate. Now, I had you on this show, I think when, what was it, 2022, I guess, when Kenny Pickett was drafted. And I asked you kind of like, what did you think? And you kind of were very honest and said, he's small, like ball doesn't come out of his hands very fast, like, kind of critical. And at the time I was like, well, this sucks. Like they just spent a first round draft pick on this guy. So let me ask you about the quarterbacks now. Like, so what are your early thoughts on Russell Wilson at his age, Justin Fields in particular? What's your early takeaways from them? Kind of like you did with Kenny Pickett back when he was a rookie.
I think Justin Fields is fascinating because when you look at the size and the athleticism and the arm strength, I mean, just a tantalizing amount of talent, right? And it comes through. It's very obvious. You see him make throws and make plays and extend plays, and man, it's special. And I think the thing about Justin Fields is maybe, I think we have a pretty good idea what the problems have been, right? And it's been, taking too many risks and turning the ball over too much. And in a setting with, minimal pass rush and, most of the time you're just making one or two reads. You're not like really trying to pick apart the defense. It's hard to say, well, this version of Justin Fields is going to be better than what we've seen in Chicago. Like right. I've seen him be really good in Chicago over stretches. So I'm not surprised that he looks really good, but man, he's just impressive physically. Russell Wilson, I think, has a little bit more touch, a little bit more feel on timing stuff. But again, the knocks on Russell Wilson have been he has trouble finding guys open over the middle and, dealing with pass rush in his face as a smaller guy who's now maybe not as athletic as he used to be. It's really hard, I think, to get a true gauge of these two guys in this setting. Like I feel like we're not going to learn that much until we get some live bullets with these guys. We already have a pretty good idea of the physical package that we're getting. I think Russell Wilson can still throw the ball. I've seen him, put 80 yards of air under one. Like, I don't think he's washed up, but, I think Justin Fields, if you're just looking at the physical package, and really that's all you can kind of look at right now, man, Justin Fields is impressive.
I mean, our arm strength is not an issue with Russell Wilson, is what you're saying. Like he still has the arm.
He definitely does not have as strong of an arm as Justin Fields. Like let's say that for sure. I think it seems strong enough to get the job done. The one thing I maybe haven't seen him do as much that I maybe would have liked to is really just like rifle some tight window throws over the middle. Like I feel like that's the thing that's, the kind of like even like a 10 or 15 yard out, I see a lot of those, especially when he's moving on the move. He looks really good. He's still like, I think that's the thing is like, I expected to see a 35-year-old man running around out there. I covered late career Ben Roethlisberger. I remember what it looked like. And it was like, to be fair to Ben, it was not the same guy. Like it was, It was kind of a shell of himself. And I don't see that from Russell. He still moves like Russell Wilson to me most of the time. And throwing on the run is always something he's been very good at. He's always been very good down the field. And he seems to have a lot of touch and feel for guys on like intermediate routes and the kind of like, the tight end is running an option or a stem and maybe he's in a different place than you exactly expected him to be in the walkthrough. He seems to find a way to put it right in guys' hands. I wonder about just really like tight windows. I think that's the thing. If I was concerned about Russell Wilson, that would be the area I would be concerned about, but I think he can still do the job. Like he doesn't look out of place.
I'm going to ask you to put your prognosticator hat on here in a second, but I've really tried to tell myself, Jeff, just focus on 2024. Let 2025 take care of itself when we get there. It's really difficult for me to do that because you look at this situation from a contractual standpoint, and the Steelers are potentially going to paint themselves into a corner with both of these quarterbacks. So if you were to guess, are we going to be in the same place as we are right now next year in terms of having no answer at the quarterback position, or do you think they're going to figure out a way to keep one of these two guys?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I was talking to Kyle Allen about this week, and like I can't. This is sort of an unprecedented. It's not just an unprecedented for the Steelers. Like I can't ever remember another team going into an offseason where they got rid of all of their quarterbacks. They brought in multiple guys who had been starters on other teams, and everybody's in the last year of their contract. I can't ever remember a team doing that. Is it going to work? I don't know. I think if they get good quarterback play out of one of those two, they'll find a way to keep them around. I think that they picked two players who they think they could be happy with if things work out. But man, there's a lot of unknown there, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Steelers aren't doing anything with the contract situation. Like I fully expect them to go into the year without one of these guys signing an extension, because I don't know how, like, what deal would they agree to? I just don't know. Like, if Russell Wilson is the 2022 version of himself, or even worse, which is certainly possible, the Steelers are going to want him around beyond 2024. And if Justin Fields doesn't get to play, why would he sign a deal? Like, and so, man, I don't know. I don't know how they end up. Maybe they could do something with a lot of incentives. I don't know, or some kind of out clause. It'd be a complicated process, I think, for me to see them signing one of these guys to a contract. So I think it's good to let it go, let it play out. I think it's possible that they could not, like, I can envision the scenario where you don't learn anything, right? Where, like, I don't know, Russell Wilson like plays a third of a season and gets hurt, and Justin Fields comes in and is just super up and down. Like 3 games looks like a world beater, and then 4 games looks miserable, and like you don't really know any more than you know right now. I certainly can envision that happening, but I think it's more likely that they'll find out something about at least one of these guys, whether they really want them back or not.
Yeah, muddy waters indeed. Let's transition to a position that has gotten a lot of attention from the fan base this offseason, and a lot of that was based on trade rumors around the draft. We're talking about wide receiver. So the wide receiver position, it's a very unique group. It's like George Pickens, and then I kind of call them like the Smurfs. And that's not to, those that know the Washington Redskins back in the day, like they had receivers that were all very diminutive in size. They were not tall, and they called them the Smurfs. So I'm not like trying to make fun of any small people, but still, George Pickens and a bunch of other guys is kind of what they have now. Do you think, let's assume they don't make any moves. There's no post June 1st trades or acquisitions or anything like that. Do you think with this current crop that they have, that they can succeed in today's NFL?
Can they be a playoff team? Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can they win the Super Bowl? No, I don't think so. I think there's interesting players there. I don't think they're like completely devoid of options. I just think they don't have options that you think you should be able to rely on. Like when I look at Van Jefferson, he's been around the league for a while, so I think like people have this conceptualization of like he's only 27 years old. It's not like this is an old player, right? And it was a 2nd round pick not that long ago. He had 800 receiving yards in 2021. I mean, it's not like that's it's not like that's so long ago that you couldn't conceive of him being able to replicate that production. I'm just not sure that based on what happened the last 2 years, we should think it's very likely. Calvin Austin, the guy drafted with a ton of potential, super fast, I think is a pretty good fit for this offense, but has not really even come close to realizing that potential at the NFL level. Quez Watkins, obviously we've seen him do some things in Philadelphia that were impressive, but with basically 0 level of consistency. So like there's nobody out there that I think you should expect to be another good wide receiver. But I do think there are some guys that could be. Roman Wilson, I mean, his college numbers last year are worse than most of these guys' pro numbers. Like I love the athlete, but the production is all projection. And so I think there's a chance it works out. I don't think we should think it will, though.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, because really, could they still make a trade? You see everyone looks at San Francisco, and San Francisco drafts a wide receiver in the round 1, and then they just give a contract extension to one of their restricted free agents, and you're like, well, how are they going to pay all of these guys? Like, it just seems like they're setting up to move one of them. It could happen, but ultimately, my question is, well, What do they have, and is it good enough? Van Jefferson, everyone is going to compare his numbers last year, like in Atlanta. Well, I mean, Atlanta, who was throwing passes? Desmond Ritter, and I don't even know who else was down there, but it was not good. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think it was Taylor Heineke was down there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting mix. And then also, how does Pat Freiermuth weigh into this? Are they going to try and utilize him more like the Chiefs use Travis Kelce? Not to compare the two, because I don't think athletically you can, but from a schematic standpoint, do you see?
I mean, hell, that they're like, I think,
yeah, I don't know.
Volume, I think Pat Freiermuth is receiver number 2 on this team. Yeah, which is not quite with the Chiefs. I mean, Kelce is receiver 1 on the Chiefs, right? So like not quite to that level. But I mean, if you think about, not this Philadelphia team, obviously, but if you think back a couple of years, like that Philadelphia Super Bowl team, like, I mean, Zach Ertz was pretty much wide receiver 2 there. Like there's been plenty of guys and I think that's a much fairer talent level comparison for a guy like Pat Freiermuth, right? Where like, it's like, okay, he could do that. Like Mark Andrews has been in Baltimore for a long time, and I don't think Pat's as good as Mark Andrews, but I don't think that's like, obviously he's not Travis Kelce. I think he could be Mark Andrews. And so I think that he's going to be I think he'll be second on the team in targets. And I don't see why. And honestly, I think Jaylen Warren might be third. Like I've been beating this drum for a long time. I think they're 5 best skill position players involved playing 2 running backs. I don't know if they will do it, but I think you're going to see the running backs be a big part of the receiving game and not just dump offs and checkdowns and swing passes, like down the field receivers. I think you're going to see them used in that role.
Well, and people forget Najee Harris's rookie year with Ben Roethlisberger quarterback. He did a good job with it.
They've been using Jaylen Warren more in that role just because they were trying to find a way to get both of them on the field. And I understand that, but Najee Harris can catch the ball just fine too. And so, yeah, I'd be using those 2 receivers. I think they're going to want to play 2 tight end because they're going to want the blocking from a guy like Darnell Washington. I'm not sure how much of a passing game, I don't know how much will be involved in the passing game, but I think you'll see more Connor Hayward. I think this offense is really well suited to his skill set in terms of being a fullback, being a wing tight end where he doesn't have to put his hand in the ground. I think like the bunch formations where he gets free releases and you can put him against safeties. I think this is a really well suited scheme for Connor Hayward's skill set. I expect him to do more this year too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's talk about the rookie class. Rookies, obviously, like the offensive line, you're not going to be able to take away too much. They're not actually blocking. But just seeing these guys, just seeing Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier out there with the veterans, and amongst all of them, Logan Lee, all of the group, what's your early takeaways on this class?
I'll start with the offensive linemen. I just think they are really advanced rookies. Like I'm like, just comparing them to other rookies that I've seen come into the league. These guys seem like they fit from day one at a different level. And that's not to say they're not screwing things up. Troy Fautanu himself said, like, man, that first day was rough. Like, and certainly, I've watched Zach Frazier do a drill, and then I've watched James Daniels come over and be like, no. Hands here. You're doing this wrong this way, but I think they just have a different, like they look, I think especially at offensive line, like you get a college offensive lineman and you stick them. And I say this all the time. It's like when we go to rookie camp and it's like rookies and tryouts, but then there'll be a few guys that were like first-year players that were with the team last year that'll come to rookie camp as well. And I always say, like, man, I never thought much of that guy as an NFL player. And then I saw him at rookie camp and I'm like, oh, he's so much better than all these guys. And I know he's bad. Like, because I've watched him practice with the actual NFL guys the whole year before. So I know that this guy is probably not good, but he's so much better than all the rest. And I think this group of rookies, you can include Mason McCormick in that as well. They don't look out of place from day one. They look like NFL linemen. Their physique, the way they carry themselves, they look like they're ready to go. I will say that I think Logan Lee looks more like those rookies that I'm talking about, on the other side of the ball, especially because it is a very veteran defensive line room. And so, when you're talking about Larry Ogunjobi and Montravius Adams and Dean Lowry, and even Isaiah Loudermilk is going to his 4th year, which feels like it has gone by very, very quickly. These guys all know what they're doing. Have been doing it for so long. And then you have this one poor rookie, in that group that does kind of stand out a little bit. But I think, Peyton Wilson to me is a guy that has been such a sponge and has such great mentors and Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts. And I think he understands the position at a mental level very well. It's a big adjustment for him. I think of all the rookies, he will be doing a job that is more different than what he did in college because they moved him around so much. He was like the Troy Polamalu of that defense, right? Where he was over here on the edge. He was in man coverage. He was blitzing up the middle. He was doing so much. And now I think, look, he's not going to start. He's going to have a limited role. And so he's kind of now like, okay, here's one thing that you need to learn, and you need to learn it really, really well instead of being all over the place. And I think he has a big transition, but I think you're going to see his impact. The size speed combo is just honestly bizarre. Like, just people aren't meant to be that tall, that long, and that fast. And so that shows up right away. I think it's a rookie class that is poised to have impacts. Like, it does not feel like these guys are immature or young. That they are, honestly, they seem like it's a been there, done that rookie class. Bunch of guys that played in big games, big time programs. I'm expecting a lot of them to have impacts right away.
Peyton Wilson, would you say it's almost Shazier-like? Ryan Shazier was a unique athlete.
Very different. I think when I talk about Ryan Shazier as an athlete, he's sudden, right? Like, that's the thing to me that, like, I would say is like the change of direction, and the power behind his strides is impressive. Peyton Wilson is just fast. Like, he's the straight line acceleration is crazy. He changes directions well for a guy as tall as he is. But it's just, he gets to places and you're like, he does not look like he is running very fast until you see how far he's gone. Whereas like Ryan Shazier was very like explosive and high effort and like change of directions. I just see like effortless speed from Peyton Wilson. And the thing that really I kind of think of when I see him running is like, man, that sort of, if you want a Tampa 2, carry the flag down the middle of the field, middle linebacker, like, he can run with any tight end in the league. I'm very sure of that. And that's the thing is, like, I can look at him and say physically he should be able to do this. But when you go look at NC State's tape, it's hard to find him having done that. Like, he is going to be asked to do very different things. But man, it's not like Shazier. It's not like anything. I said this during the draft. I actually asked, I think it was Terrell Austin about this in the draft process. It's like, when you have a guy who does not look like anyone, who his game is just a one-of-one kind of physical athlete, do you like that? Do you say we have this guy that no one has anyone like him? Or is it daunting to say, like, hey, how is this person going to translate to the NFL? Because there's no obvious comparison. I think that you can make a similar case to Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson broke the mold in terms of quarterbacks of his size having success in the NFL level. I think one of the downsides of that is when you get to this point in his career, it's not like you can say, oh, well, all these other 5'10" quarterbacks aged so gracefully. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I think it's interesting. Like, I can't put a player comp on Peyton Wilson. He's unlike anyone. The player that he reminds me of is Bill Cowher. That is the player that except he's like 6'5", and so like it still doesn't fit. He reminds me, it's like if you took a very, very, very fast small linebacker. I see the people talk about Jack Lambert, and I'm like, it is totally unfair to compare a guy who's a fourth round pick, third round pick to a Hall of Famer, but like that style of play, I think, fast, very fast, still tough, sort of like gangly, like a little bit awkward, not fluid as an athlete. I think I see why people want to go there, because like it's really hard for me to find someone modern to compare him to.
Yeah, I've been saying since he got drafted that I feel like he's in a really good spot as a rookie. And he's not going to be asked to do too much. Like you said, he might have a sub package. Like some people have said he's going to play the Robert Spillane role. Okay, whatever. That's fine. That's one thing that he can focus on. I think he's by far a superior athlete than Robert Spillane ever was or will be. But still, he can just focus on that one thing. And if Cole Holcomb's able to come back and be healthy, then even if injuries did happen to the players ahead of him, he still wouldn't be called in. And I think that's fine. He can be a special teams guy. Let him ease his way in. I love that.
I think I think if you're a Steelers fan, you're gonna be very, very excited about Peyton Wilson covering kickoffs this year.
That's good.
I think that is gonna be fun to watch.
Okay. Let's talk about that. I have that on my list of things. Have they been practicing the new kickoffs? How awkward does it look? Is it weird? Is Chris Boswell the one that's doing the kickoffs? Because I've seen some NFL teams say we're looking at other options in terms of who's good, because you have to place it. I would imagine Boswell could do all of that. Am I correct?
I have not seen them do like a full up with the kick and everything.
Okay.
They're kind of breaking it down to like just the reception on at this point. But I mean, I assume that Chris Boswell is going to be the one kicking off. Matthew Wright's in camp too. So, I mean, this time of year, Boswell's not doing a lot of kicking. Sure. Probably won't in training camp either. So I think you'll mostly see Matthew Wright do it. Like when we get to training camp, I think you'll just from the, I think there's going to be a lot of reps in kickoff this year. And so I think you see a lot of Matthew Wright kicking the ball, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be the one doing it in the season. I'm not as concerned about the kickers making tackles. A lot of people seem to be talking about like, oh, the kickers are going to have to make tackles. If the kicker has to make a tackle, it's a touchdown. The kicker is 30 yards away from the rest of the team when the ball hits the ground. There's just no way he's ever making a tackle. Like even if Peyton Wilson was kicking off, Peyton Wilson would be making the tackle from that position anyway. I mean, you can't give a kickoff returner that much open field and still bring him down. Like it's just not. I don't know how kickers are going to make tackles. I don't see it. What it mostly reminds me of right now is like after the third pass of a hook and ladder play.
Okay.
So like you have all these different size bodies. They're in weird positions on the field, and everyone's just trying to like stay like sort of spaced out from one another and kind of stay in a lane. Like it's not like tight formationally like an offensive or defensive snap. And so you get a lot of open field kind of tackling. But that's kind of what it reminds me of right now, where you just see, players spaced out evenly from sideline to sideline, and defensive players sort of, there's a lot of like, okay, I'm holding the block, but I'm trying to be in this gap and not over pursue. And I think you're going to see an awful lot of defenses be very conservative in the beginning, where you're not going to see like guys flying to the ball. You're going to see defenses kind of say like, hey, 10 or 15 yards, that's fine. We'll take that. We'll deal with that and not get themselves exposed, because you can like run offensive plays. Like I've gone back and watched some of the XFL stuff, and there's like guys running counters and running toss sweeps out of the kickoff formation. And like, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to add a new element. I always hated how the touchback just became like an extension of, it was just another commercial break essentially. It's like, it's not even worth watching. So it's going to be worth watching. I want to ask you about, again, I've said this on multiple podcasts that I feel like everyone gets obsessed with the new shiny toy, and that's the new rookie class. And obviously so. But you go back to 2023, that was the highly touted class. That was the class that was compared to 1974. And I thought that was, well, that's ridiculous. But nonetheless, there's a lot of expectations amongst that 2023 group. I want to ask you about a couple of players in particular, but number one has to be Broderick Jones. He had some issues last year, whether he's playing the left or the right. Pass pro, like the guy is still ridiculously young. He was raw coming out of Georgia. What have you seen from him in terms of maybe even just a mentality? Like, I feel like a lot of these guys, when you see these little news clips and you watch the interviews that they put on social media, it's like that, been there, done that. Okay, I can kind of be myself. What have you seen from Broderick Jones?
I think I see, Broderick Jones was very young as a rookie. And I think when I'm talking about this rookie class, like he was obviously young. Like when you put, it's like, if you threw a middle schooler into the varsity practice, like you're just like, forget the size. Even if he was 6'4", 250, he'd still be acting like a middle schooler, right? Like, and so I think there was some of that to Broderick Jones. last year where it wasn't anything bad. It wasn't negative. You could just tell that this is a guy who is 10 years younger than the guy playing guard next to him. And they're just different. And I think there's a little bit more of confidence. I think there's a little more seriousness. He's really trying hard to be a follow me leader and be the example setter for that line. He's not going to be, I don't think, a raw guy. But I think he can, even though he's younger than Mason McCormick and Troy Fautanu, I think he can be hey, look, this is how this is done. I'll do it. I'll show you. Then you follow me. And I think that's been really good for him. I'm not sure how this goes with the offensive line. I don't really think the Steelers know either. I don't think they're in a hurry to find out. I think they would like Broderick Jones to play left tackle, but there's a lot of moving pieces there. And it's sort of three battles, right? Where you kind of have, okay, who's the better left tackle first? And then, okay, after you've decided who's the better left tackle, then who's the better right tackle? And so I think they're going to try both Jones and Fautanu on both sides and really see what they have in both of those guys. I think Dan Moore's struggles with playing the right side has been very inconvenient over the last few years at times. I think they would like it if both of these guys could at least have some semblance of ability to be able to do both going forward. Right. And so I think they're trying that out, and we'll see how it plays out. But I expect Broderick Jones to, it's weird because there's still a lot of unknown with him. It would not surprise me if there's still struggles early in 2023. And I don't think that's, I'm sorry, 2024. And I don't think that's a disaster if it happens. He was drafted because he has this crazy combination of size, athleticism, strength, power. You got to give that some time to develop. And he didn't play that much. He didn't play at all on the left side. So I think there's still going to be some growing pains. But I don't think that should dissuade anyone from believing in his potential.
Where does kind of like the forgotten guy in 2023's class, where does Spencer Anderson fit amongst this group when we're talking about the offensive line?
He's playing all on the inside, so center and guard. I think they're looking at him as a potential Nate Herbig replacement. I think that's if you're Spencer Anderson, I think that's I'm not sure if he makes the team this year. It's going to be difficult. There's kind of a logjam there, but I think the idea is to have him be someone who can be, 3 or maybe 4 position flexible if you include right tackle in that mix, but primarily on the inside. And, I think that's the idea, is that's your kind of future swing interior backup. And he's a smart guy. I think they really like him for his intelligence. He probably does not have the kind of just raw power that you usually think of when you think of a guard at the NFL level. But I think center at the NFL level, if he could really focus and hone in on snapping the ball, and I think he's smart enough to get guys set. So, I think you could be looking at the future, interior of the offensive line being Frazier, McCormick, and Anderson being a big part of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I want to ask you about a question that I think this is something you could glean from even in the interview session. So Cam Hayward's not there. We know this. TJ Watt wasn't there last week. He's jet setting around the according to his
Instagram Austria story. The last time I checked in on his Instagram feed. I'm not sure where else he was.
So regardless, I've always seen, Cam's not there. We all know that story. This opens up the door for someone else to lead. TJ's not there. So who is the guy that you've seen? We know that Russell Wilson's probably the guy on the offensive side, but on defense, especially, who's been taking the reins then and saying, fine, I'll be the leader. I'll be the one that gets everyone going. With Cam and TJ not there, who is it?
Well, Minkah Fitzpatrick's there. So I think that's probably the guy that most of that falls to. He's right there. In the same conversation as those guys anyway. But I'll say if you talk about those specific positions, I think Isaiah Loudermilk is a guy who is he's been there now a while, and he's not a young guy anymore. And when they came out in their first reps, first team period, he was out there. And so I think he's become a guy that's become more confident in his voice. I think he's a quiet guy by nature, but I think he's it's funny because Dean Lowry's an 8-year vet, but he's new to this defense. And I think, watching those two guys interact has been fascinating because it's been I think it's been a true give and take where it's like, hey, how do you do things here? Okay. And then, how do you, hey, I saw you do this. That's different. How do I learn that technique? I think he's been a guy that's really stepped up. At outside linebacker, Alex Highsmith is, very much a leader at that group as well. And then Patrick Queen, I think, is a natural kind of leader of men and someone that I think a lot of players look up to just because of who he is, where he came from. I think that he just seems to have a natural sort of gravity to his personality where people just kind of want to follow him. And so he's someone that I think a lot of people have latched onto as well.
Interesting stuff. What are your last question here before I let you go? And you've been very generous of your time, and I appreciate that.
Of course.
What are your thoughts on this 2024 team as it's just starting to kind of be molded? The roster pretty much finalized. You're going to have a couple moving pieces here between now and training camp and even during training camp. But what do you think about this team? What are your expectations?
I think this could be the year that we see not only a statistically very good, but an actual truly dominant Steelers defense. They've been good. I think they were top 10 in scoring defense 2 of the last 3 years, or maybe all of the last 3 years, something like that. But I think we could see a defense that could truly take over some games. You add Patrick Queen to what they had. You add Dante Jackson, who I think is going to be a really good outside corner complement to Joey Porter Jr. You add Deshaun Elliott, really stabilize that strong safety position. Let Minkah Fitzpatrick be the all-pro version of him that we saw when he was playing with Terrell Edmonds. I don't think you need a star to put with him, but I think you do need more consistency than they had last year. There are still some question marks, but man, go find me a better defense on paper right now. It's pretty tough. They're up there, I think. And so I think they could really be dominant on defense. I think on offense, there's no reason to think they can't run the ball. I look at Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and by the way, talk about some leadership there. Najee's been very vocal and in a way that I think, maybe not like the traditional leadership role, but Jalen Warren had a great quote this week. He said, "One match gets lit, and then that lights the rest of the pack." And he has certainly been that sort of fire starter for the offense where he's there, he showed up, he's giving 110%, he's talking crap, he's getting guys going, and I think it's been good for that whole unit. Their offensive line, I'm not sure that it's going to be massive noticeable improvements with day one, but I don't know how you can't look at the talent they've added, the physical tools, and say, wow, the potential is there for that to be a very strong unit. I don't know that their passing game is going to be very good. I think there's too many question marks for me to say that. But if they can run the ball, if they can dominate time of possession, they can dominate the turnover margin, they can have dominant defense, I think this could be a really good team. It's a tough division. I don't know that record is going to reflect that necessarily. But I think this team right now looks like a group where if they get in the playoffs again, and they have to go back to Buffalo, or if they have to go to Arrowhead, or if they have to go to Cincinnati or Baltimore and play Burrow or Jackson on the road, this is a group that I think has the tools that would allow you to inspire some more confidence from that matchup. If you're going into a game against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs and you don't have Patrick Mahomes, you are bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? Right. You do not have what they have. But if you say, okay, if I don't have a gun, what's the next best thing? I think it would be a team that can dominate time of possession, that can dominate turnover margin, and have a dominant defense, especially when you're talking about winning cold weather games, bad weather games. I don't know. It feels like a team that maybe is not going to be a lot better than a 9 or 10 or 11 win team, but I think a team that maybe you could feel better about going into the postseason than the last couple. They went to Kansas City in 2021, and they went to Buffalo in 2023, and they just got waxed both times. It was not close. Right. I feel like this team is angling to put itself in a better position to win one of those games.
Well said. Well said, Alan. As always, I appreciate your time. I'm going to give you an opportunity to plug your website, social media handles, all that good stuff. Good.
Yeah, of course. All my written work at SteelersNow.com, at PGH SteelersNow on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. And of course, my stuff personally at @Saunders_PGH. You can check out my podcast, Steelers Afternoon Drive with Zachary Smith, on YouTube or wherever you find podcasts. And we thank Jeff and the Fans First Sports Network for hosting our podcast. It's been great and wonderful, and we can't wait to add to that partnership and keep going because it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Alan, thanks again, man. Enjoy it. And we'll be talking soon.
Sounds good.